You got it?
I think I tried. Yep.
It's with Bluetooth, right?
It turns off, but
Okay. All right. Make sure. All right. Well, we've had our challenges with this, and hopefully in the near future we'll get something other than this thing. But we just want to make sure that at least it's legible and you can hear it and understand it on when we post the videos. All right. So thank you again for coming. I am honored that you actually come back. So that's a good thing. Before we do anything, we do have some handouts, and maybe they're coming. I'm not sure if we're all busy and things get lost in the shuffle. Hopefully we'll have it. This is the handout if we can get it. If we don't get it tonight, I'll give it to you when I can. But before we get started on anything, I'd like to just start this evening with asking, do you have any questions after you've been looking at this for the past several weeks? Anything we can get started on? Any questions? I know that we've given you some new stuff to think about, and so in some cases it may have jarred your the traditions that you've come to believe in from over time. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Oh, good. Everybody understands it. Hopefully that means that I'm conveying it correctly, or clearly anyway. All right. So what I would like to, did you all take that homework question I gave you from last week and think about it?
Yes.
Okay. So that's okay. What I do have some homework. On the bottom of this, I have some homework that I want to give you for next time. But what I want to do now is I want to just kind of pause here and just see where we are in the process of understanding. Again, my objective is not to make you believe something. My objective is just to help you or share with you what I believe it says in the text and give it to you so you can evaluate it and do the work of the brain and go and analyze it on your own time. There's no way we're going to be able to cover everything in the Hebrew text as we just don't have enough time for that. So basically what I want to just find out from you is we talked about the garden and we talked about the new heavens and the new earth. So what I have been trying to show you via the text is that what we have in the Garden of Eden is what we lost when sin came in. What we had in the Garden of Eden was a situation of eternal life, physical existence, perfect relationships, the command to rule the universe, the command to be fruitful and multiply, and so forth, and the command to obey. There was a command not to eat of that tree, right? Because in the day that you eat of it, the command was, you will start to die, and you will die until you're dead. And if we look into very germane to that idea is the idea in the Hebrew. It says, God says, in the day that you eat of that fruit, it does not say, you shall surely die. That's not what it says in the Hebrew. What it says in the Hebrew is, dying, you will die. And it puts two different tenses together. It puts a progressive tense next to a static tense. So you have a dynamic and a static thing going on there with that phrase that's usually translated as, you shall surely die. But in Hebrew it says this, in the day that you eat of that fruit, you will begin to die, and you will continue to die as a process until the event of death overtakes you. So the idea is that you're not going to start to die unless and until you eat of that fruit. So theoretically, the garden, Adam and Eve and everything in it, and the garden and the whole universe was created to exist for eternity. It was created with the potential to be eternal. We as human beings were created to be in a physical garden. And as we went through some of the scriptures, and we'll go through it again here briefly, man, as we see man being created, he was created. We know that in Genesis chapter 1, it says, and God said, let us make man in our image. So he talked about man being in his image, and there's a lot of things we could say about that. But I think the most important thing about that is that God wanted to create a being like him with whom he could have a loving relationship. And it wasn't just a being, it was a race of beings that was called the Adam, Ha-Adam. There's a verse that we're going to look at today where the word Adam is translated as mankind. And we'll look at that in just a moment. But he created man to have this relationship with him in this eternality of this physical garden. It was a sanctuary wherewith the Creator could come and meet with the Adam and have fellowship in a loving relationship. And if man had not sinned, if man had not disobeyed the commandment of the covenant, he would have continued for eternity, fulfilling the commands to be fruitful and multiply, and would have had millions of descendants on into eternity, filling the universe perhaps. So the idea was not to be born, live and die, and then something. The intent of the creation was to be what it is. 6 days of creation, man was put into the garden on the Sabbath, and that was to be the rest for all of us. And we would just move on into eternity in fellowship with the Creator, creating a family for him and for us. And that was the idea. However, we know that Adam and Eve did not stick with that covenant, and something changed. And so what changed is that he started to die, but it wasn't just him. So the command was not just about the Adam. The command was about everything over which he had delegated authority. He was given rulership, remember? So everything under his authority followed him wherever he went. If he led them into righteousness by being obedient to the covenant, then there it would go. But if he led it into corruption, as Paul says in Romans 8, there it would go. And there it went. All of creation followed the decision of the leadership that God had delegated the authority to. And Adam took us, the creation, into a realm of corruption and death by virtue of the temptation that the serpent presented. So we have this whole thing about the garden. This is where we were created. Now, going to this is the handout. I'll just start here briefly, and then we're going to kind of skip to something else. And we're going to go back and forth between some things. So creation, as we know it, is corporeal, which means that it's made of physical stuff. It's got, it's physical. We have physical bodies, and the world is physical. The sun and moon is physical. The stars are physical. It's a created physical universe. But we also know that the corporeal universe is not the only universe of creation. There's also a non-corporeal universe, a non-corporeal set of beings that are not a part of the creation as we know it. And we know them as angels. They were created to be non-physical. Their realm of existence was non-physical. They exist in a world that we don't understand. We know very little about that realm, but let's just say as a shortcut, we can say they exist in a spiritual realm. At least a realm where they don't have physical bodies. They exist as far as we know in a non-corporeal environment. So there is two parts to creation. One is corporeal and one is non-corporeal. Now, where are we created? We are in the corporeal. Adam was formed from the dirt of the ground, right? He was a physical being from the earth. That's what his name is, Ha-Adamah, Ha-Adam, which means that he was created from the dirt. Adamah means either ground, or it does have the nuance of the color red. So maybe the ground was red, but he was a physical being created from the physical earth in a physical garden. He was created as a physical being. And Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 which we'll look at again here momentarily, is the verse where that happened. In chapter 2, verse 7, Adam was created. And in that verse, we have three words that we talked about reviewing. There's three words that go in there. The first one is nafach, which means to breathe forcefully, force air. And the second one is neshama, which is actually the air that is forced. And then the third word is nephesh, which means the result of that action created a physical being called a nephesh. So Adam received the breath of God, the breath of life, the statue, let's say, the sculpture that God created from the clay. God breathed into this form, the breath of life, and this thing, this physical sculpture, became a living being. And that's the last words of chapter 2, verse 7. He became a living nephesh, a nefesh chaya, a living being as a result of that. Now, the three words there are nafach, which he breathed, neshama is what he breathed, and nefesh is what happened because of his breath and his breathing. We became living beings, right? So we were created as living beings in a physical garden, in a physical environment. If you take away the breath, there is no Adam, because now he's not alive. If you take away the body, there is no Adam, because that's part of what he is. That's the clay feature that he was made. So the Adam, man, is a combination of breath and body. In that text, we have what man is. In that text, there's no indication that we have anything inside of us that is immortal. Everything about that is that God gave us a breath, brought us physically alive, and put us in the garden. And God said, in the day that you eat of that fruit, you're going to start to disintegrate until you don't exist. And if you recall, after he had done that in chapter 3, when the Father, the Creator, was bringing on the pronouncements of the punishment, he told them, dust you are, and dust you shall return to. So you will become what you were before I made you. You will become dust. It's said another way, you will cease to exist. Your existence is entirely dependent upon how you and I relate together. If you and I, Adam and the Creator, if you and I have a proper relationship, have an obedient relationship, and we are both in this covenant relationship together, and we're being covenant obedient, as a result of that, you can stay alive and we'll have a nice time together. But if you violate that, you're going to lose it. And they did violate it, and they did lose it. They started to die. They realized they were naked, and that's a whole other subject we can do some other time. But it was about an alienation that they immediately got from God. They were immediately separated from the covering of the Spirit of God, and it was very visible and apparent to them that they were now alienated. Is this working?